What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Terry L, Boxstar TV. Man, I'm back at y'all again with another one. Hey, yo, the fight over the weekend was the bomb. I'm here talking about the fight between Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders. Let's get right into it. Before we get started, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. Support the channel. We're putting out fresh work. This, obviously, podcast and this video is sponsored by Reka, REKA property, you know what I mean? Support the brothers, they're doing their thing. Also sponsored by Planet Organic and Netface Fitness. Yo, we keeping it real. So let's talk about the fight, y'all. Now, Canelo Alvarez, King Canelo, the main man Canelo, whatever you want to call him, just Canelo, did his thing on Saturday. I actually had Billy Joe Saunders putting in some work. I thought he was going to make a better account of himself. I wasn't doubting the power and the boxing ability of, obviously Canelo Alvarez. If you listen to my previous podcast, I was talking about Canelo's ability to cut the ring off. He's just a maestro in the ring. His boxing IQ is quite high. And I always said that if Billy Joe was going to beat Canelo or even stand a chance, he would have to box a damn near perfect fight for 12 rounds, which is pretty impossible to do for most fighters because no one's perfect. However, let's talk about what Canelo did in that fight. Now, from the off, what Canelo did was very significant. He went to that body. We know he's a fantastic body puncher. And obviously Canelo was saying before the fight that he could knock Billy Joe Saunders out. He predicted a knockout, and he gave everyone a TKO, which is pretty much as close to a knockout as you can get. But those body shots from round one let everybody know that this guy meant business. Now, I think Billy Joe Saunders had a game plan. I think it worked for most of them, especially in the middle rounds, round 4, 5, and 6. I think he won those rounds. I had him winning, especially round 5 and 6. He definitely won 2 rounds by most of the judges' scorecards. If you look at the way he fought in the middle rounds, he commanded the ring. He boxed beautifully. He was moving off the back foot. He was boxing off the front foot. He was popping his jab. I don't think he was busy enough to offset Canelo's rhythm. And even when he was throwing combinations, Canelo obviously didn't like those combinations being thrown at him, but he just didn't throw enough of those combinations in the middle rounds, even the rounds that he won. But he was slippery. He was tricky. I actually think that he did some good stuff in there, even in the rounds that he lost. But you just can't give Canelo too much respect, especially when it comes to those punishing, crunching body shots. And that takes legs out of you. So what you don't understand about boxing for some people is that if you continue to get taxed to the body, and those body shots are hard and punishing, at some point towards the end of the round or even the middle rounds, they'll take its toll on you, especially if you're someone like Billy Joe who likes to move around on your feet and stay agile. Whereas you look at Canelo, he's pretty flat-footed, and he's pretty robust. So he could take a body shot and even take shots to the head because, Mexicans, they just built differently. I mean, you got to give it to them. Those guys is built differently. And he's definitely fought Canelo better than most fighters, although I'll take that back. Austin Trout fought a pretty good fight, and Lara fought a pretty good fight. And, of course, Triple G fought an awesome fight. And let's not forget Danny Jacobs fought a pretty good fight. So yeah, there's an elite few people who fought Canelo quite well. However, you got to fight this man almost as well as he's fighting you. And I think Triple G will always look at his previous fights and feel aggrieved because none of these other fighters besides Triple G has fought Canelo Alvarez as tough and as hard as he gives it. So a gritty performance, but not gritty enough. Now let's talk about the fight in terms of how it was stopped. Now, a lot of people are saying that Billy Joe Saunders quit because he got back to his corner on the 8th round. They had a look at him. He probably had a chat with him. They probably had a chat with him and said, look, Joe, man, this ain't really working too good, man. And your eye, you can't open that goddamn eye. And it looked like there might be some orbital damage. We're not going to take any chances. So they called to shots. In fact, his corner called time on that fight and said, you're not going back out. Some people will say, well, maybe that happened and maybe Billy Joe didn't want it himself. Well, let's examine that for a minute. First of all, Billy Joe fought on the rest of that fight. The remainder of that round, the 8th round. And he fought pretty tough, rugged performance to the end of that round. So he didn't fight as if he was quitting. He fought back until the bell rung. So it wasn't as if he gave up in the ring. Okay, so he got back to the corner. So his corner's job, they are employed to look after their fighter. So if you are an employer, the employer in this case is Billy Joe Saunders. The employee is the coach. They work for the fighter. So it is the employee's job to look after the employer. So in this case, the first task of the employee is to make sure the employer is all right, that they can make some money for the employer, or he's going to be or they are going to be in a good position to go forward. So in this case, the employee-employer position was sorted. And I think these guys did the right decision. And I think Mark Tibbs and his crew, they looked at it and thought, okay, this guy's young. If there is some damage, let's stop the bleeding now. Let's look after his future. And let's think this guy can come back and have a future even after this fight. And he can fight another 2-3 more years, whatever the case may be. And if it's not too damaging, then we've stopped the damage from being worse than what it could have been. Okay? That's the corner's job. The corner did their job. Now, to me, a fighter doesn't quit, and a corner is not thrown in the towel when a man has damage like an eye socket. Nobody wants to go blind. No disrespect to blind people. If a blind person had the choice between seeing and being blind, they want to see. So nobody wants to go out and become a blind person. So let's get that squared out. Now, in terms of boxing, it's a grueling sport in itself. Now, there was talk that Canelo said in one of his post interviews that he could felt a crunch once he caught Billy Joe. I believe it was a right upper as Billy Joe leaned into that punch. So he was throwing that counter uppercut, which he's a great counter puncher, Canelo. And as he threw that counter right hand in an uppercut fashion, Billy Joe somehow leaned into it. Now let's go back to this talk about those body shots. Now he's probably leaning to shots because his legs were gone or they were fading. In the beginning of the rounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, even round 4, he wasn't dipping into punches the way he was in the 6th, 7th, 8th round. So by the time he caught that right hand, maybe he was just fatigued, and the fatigue made him slip and roll into a way that he would have normally done. And with a dangerous puncher like Canelo, he caught that punch as Canelo was throwing it up, and he was dipping his body down. Now all of his body weight is coming to a punch. He's either going to get knocked out or get flattened or take that punch and stand up on it. In this case, the damage was done. So people, think about it. If you have never been into a fight before, don't run your mouth thinking you know about fighting. Fighting is such where there's going to be a give and take. Now, the reason why some people win fights and lose fights is because some people haven't taken as much punishment as the other. So the last man standing normally wins. In this case, it was Canelo. In the case of Billy Joe, he didn't quit. What happened was they assessed that the damage done to his eye was too much of a burden for him to take going forward. Yeah, he can walk up and shake the man's hand and move on, but I think you need to understand from a fighter's point of view and from a coach's point of view, they have to look after the fighter. So unless you get knocked out and you go out in your gum shield, that's different. And when you hear people say, nah, he quit, he should have gone out in his gum shield, that's just baloney. Because in reality, if you're in pain and if your pain is unbearable, and there's been some fighters that have illustrated that, Daniel Dubois, Kell Brook, and the like. When it's too much to bear, you cannot continue. It's as simple as that. That's my view. That's the Boxstar view. Give us your take on what you think. Once again, this podcast is sponsored by Next Phase Fitness, Rika Property Management, Planet Organic, BoxFit UK. Everybody's getting involved, showing Boxstar love. Show us some love. Hit the like and subscribe button. Leave your comments. Holler at a brother. Peace out.